Terry, I'm here.
I really like today's backdrop.
I shot live on location at a secret location that I can't tell you about, but it was in space.
Looks like Pompeii. I'm
It
going to
was
say what.
Pompeii space.
what will the Mars addresses be?
Oh, that's a great question. Did you know that Canada has zip codes for each side of the street?
Seriously?
Yeah.
What's the rationale behind that?
Oh, I don't know. I had to manage a database of Canadian zip codes once. And I didn't dig a whole lot further because it's a lot of database management doing. So I didn't dig that deep. It was in my, I've always been a curious person, but that was a case where I just didn't dig very deep. And it's been a
Yeah.
long time, and I still didn't dig deep. It might have even been before I could easily Google the answer. That might have been why I don't know.
Do you find that you have a filter where, because I think half of knowledge acquisition is knowing what not to pursue. And I feel like I can very quickly see something and know it's not worth my time. Do you do that, or do you give everything a fair shake?
I'm a quick judge. I would say I don't know that I give everything a fair shake. No. I'm a quick judge, but also I don't know. I feel like I'm often wrong. The fallback for me is that knowledge is nearly infinite. So no matter how much knowledge I collected today, congratulations, a rounding error from zero,
Yeah, agreed.
and that's okay. It's about the pursuit.
Comforting and frustrating.
Ooh, it's like death, right? I mean, everybody's going the same place.
Yeah,
Comforting and frustrating.
it is. I don't worry about my death at all. I mean, I don't want to die tomorrow, but I don't worry about it.
I worry more about how much I'm thinking about my death than I worry about death. I'm not
Yeah,
worried about death, but I'm wondering sometimes why I'm thinking about death as often as I do. And then other times I'm not thinking about death that often.
yeah. You have young children though, so
I
that's an
gotta I gotta make it till the little one is like 10 or 11. That's the goal. I
yeah,
mean, the goal is to live indefinitely and
right.
die in my sleep happily. But backup goal would be like, have the kid be a little older. Have them remember me.
Yeah, I think that's solidified now. Just how well.
But also, it's not a matter of the days in the life. It's the life and the days. I think that was Smokey and the Bandit said that. Maybe, maybe Smokey Robinson. Maybe I don't know. Shoeless.
Smoky Bones.
A person definitely said that. I didn't make it up.
Was it a beetle?
I doubt it. No, I don't think so. No, it was a no, it wasn't a Beatle. It was a philosopher, a famous thinker.
Okay, now hold on. We went from Smokey and the Bandit to philosopher.
Smokey and the Bandit wasn't a philosopher.
No.
Maybe I'm thinking of a different movie.
Yeah. How popular was that movie in the late 70s, early 80s?
Feels like very.
Extremely. Everybody wanted to be a truck driver after that, or own a Trans Am, or both.
Have you ever been a truck driver or owned a Trans Am?
I have not, but my father was.
He was
So,
a Trans Am owner or a truck driver?
no, definitely not a Trans Am owner, but a truck driver.
You know what they call the big bird on the front of the Firebird?
The Firebird.
They call it the screaming chicken.
Seriously?
Yeah,
It doesn't look like a chicken at all.
yeah, but I mean, if you're trying to make fun of people that have a giant Firebird on the front of their car, screaming chicken seems like a great choice.
Yeah. I just think it's interesting how some cars, but this is transferable to a lot of other things. Some cars from that era don't don't make it from a nostalgia standpoint with the cool factor, but those cars do.
I think a Pontiac Firebird, Pontiac Trans Am Firebird is still considered a cool car,
For sure.
even if I don't know its actual name. My kids will never know Pontiac. They started collecting Hot Wheels and playing car video games And I was like, oh, well, that's a car that company doesn't exist anymore.
There's no
A lot of them.
Pontiac.
No, they're long gone.
You're gonna have to send them to Cuba.
I don't, yeah, for the real old ones. Not
Well,
for the ones I grew up with. All the Pontiacs I grew up with were things like the Pontiac Vibe, which was a Toyota Corolla hatchback,
yeah,
except with a different badge on it, made at the plant that is now the Tesla plant in Fremont.
yeah, and their JV.
Yeah, Numi, famous
Yeah,
MBA case study situation there.
that was Toyota and GM, right?
Toyota and GM. Yeah,
Yeah,
New United Motor Manufacturing International, aka a big plant to make Chevys and Geos and Toyota Corollas.
and it didn't last.
I mean, it was a good run. It was 20, 30 years, something like that. But then it was shuttered for a long time, and then Tesla bought it. Now they call it the Gigafactory, which I guess rolls off the tongue more than Numi. I guess I don't know.
And
Numi just reminded me of gummy, like a gummy bear, but the German pronunciation of gummy.
Numi sounds like an AI startup.
Oh, Numi should definitely be an AI startup.
Yeah,
Is it possible to fake an AI startup using an AI?
for sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that seems like a great use case for AI. I mean, not necessarily a good thing to do for like with your time or for humanity, but it does seem like AI would be great at making a pretend company about AI.
And it would probably be something that you could get investors for.
Oh God, I feel like I have a stone unturned.
Let's hear
Speaking
it.
of speaking of faking it instead of doing it, yesterday we talked about writing research papers as a civilian, and I feel like first of all, I don't. I feel like I skirted around the issue here. I talked about how I submitted papers to these conferences, but it kind of doesn't get to it doesn't generalize very well. And I was thinking about all these other cases where, do you actually have to be credentialed or do you have to be an insider to do whatever the thing is? So there are some places where you just do it and that's the thing. Like there's no blessing given to rock stars or lead guitarists. The way you become a lead guitarist is you learn to play the guitar, then you grow your hair out, and then you join a band, and then you audition for the band, and if you're in the band, you're in the band, and you're the lead guitarist, right? Like nobody says you can't be a lead guitarist unless their explanation is you are not able to play these songs, or we don't like you and don't want you in our band. Am I missing any criteria there?
Um, ripped up jeans,
Yeah, that's a big
uh,
one.
probably a belt buckle, a large belt buckle.
Some kind of belt buckle.
Yeah. Probably a wife beater with an open, flowy button up. And
Emotions without words. Gotta have those.
yeah, you definitely have to display dark and mysterious. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's about it.
And then there's things where I'll just stick with the rock star stuff. So like if you want to be a Harley rider, I don't know why I keep picking this as a thing that I come back to. But if you want to be a Harley rider, all you got to do is go to the store and buy a jacket and either buy or rent a Harley and then put it in a trailer and drive it to Daytona. And now you're a Harley rider. And like, sure, within the subculture, you'll be judged because
Oh yeah.
you're an accountant, right? Yeah, you'll be judged. And there'll be the real
Oh
ones and the
yeah.
fake ones.
And they can smell it from a mile away.
Yeah, but from where you and I sit, you're driving an electric car and you see somebody on a hog. I mean, maybe you know if they're a dentist or an accountant. Maybe you don't know. Maybe you care. Maybe you don't care. All you know is that's a guy on a Harley.
Yeah.
And then if like you don't want to meet them because they're on a Harley. Because what happens if they're an actual dyed in the wool hardcore biker gang Harley rider? You don't want to tussle with that guy. And
So
and if it's an accountant that's just a weekend warrior, that might actually be worse.
yeah, because they've got to get their bona fides. They know they're a weasel, and they've got to make up for it. So those are the types to probably do something rash in a provoked situation.
Well, that's not even where I was going with that. I was just going with it. You'd think that you were going to get into it with a biker, and it turns out that it was just a dork in biker's clothing.
Yeah, but see, that's what I'm saying. This guy's got like a syringe of something that he's going to hit you with while you're arguing, and
Antifreeze.
yeah,
Um,
then that's
what
that.
are what about AI? Can you be an AI practitioner without any bona fides or bona fides?
Oh, so don't get me started there.
I feel like you can be a bad practitioner.
You can't make things work, but so your title, first of all, if your title has the word evangelist in it, just quit. Just quit. Don't work. But I've seen, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because it doesn't matter, but there are people who hire in the same fashion that pharmaceutical companies hire, and I'll just leave it at that. People to go do presentations and stuff about the future of AI or the possibilities of AI. So yeah, you can be a mouthpiece for it. Um, but in terms of making things work, it's hard to fake your way through that.
But do you? I mean, okay, so fake it or not. But say you're not faking, but you also, I mean, you're not credentialed. You wrote an algorithm, or you wrenched. I don't even know how this works. Do you just sit at a computer and work on an algorithm? Do you find a test set? Do you test data set? Do you have to find your own training data? I mean, is it possible? Like, you can be a shade tree mechanic. Can you be a shade tree AI practitioner?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You're saying yes and absolutely, but you shook your head very violently.
But they're absolutely.
I feel like your body language might have given away your true feelings here.
No, you there are a lot of people who have positions making things work in AI that have been credentialed in something else. I don't think you can be like a door to door. You can't be an insurance salesman and do AI unless you're just really good at writing code. But then you also have to know sort of the fundamentals of data science and that sort of thing. So I think the movement uh, in the tech space generally is if you've got a GitHub portfolio and you can take this test and pass it,
Those
they
are the
don't
keys.
they don't really care.
I have a question for you about James Cameron, the director. Do you know who this guy is?
I know that name, but I can tell you this is not going to go well.
he's he's known for a couple of little movies that you may have heard of, like the
Ti-
movie the
Titanic.
movie, yeah, Titanic, and his other big nautical hit about AI, um, Terminator. That's a
I've
big
ne-
one.
I've never seen either one of those.
You don't have to for this conversation.
Okay.
Also, animated 3D stink bomb Avatar. Big, big, big name with Avatar. So this is a Titanic question. Did you know that James Cameron is also an undersea explorer?
No, but that makes sense.
And I don't want to. I haven't like watched a James Cameron undersea explorer documentary to explain this to me. So these opinions are based on some assumptions I've made from the outside and generalizing from what I'm able to just see as a regular person. But my impression here is that James Cameron directed Titanic, the movie, and got really into the Titanic, and then decided that he wanted to do undersea exploration. And that was about the long and the short of it, honestly. So he did.
I,
And I was like, and I remember at the time post Titanic, I was young then because it was a long time ago. I remember hearing about James Cameron undersea explorer, and I didn't. I like. I don't know anything about undersea exploration. I'm not an undersea exploration gatekeeper. Sure, I've watched a Cousteau flick here and there. I like nature documentaries, but I'm like, who is this James Cameron who thinks he can go from directing movies to being an undersea explorer? Why is he doing that? Is this just some rich playboy thing? No, he apparently just really likes undersea exploration. And a lot of exploring the deep sea involves, you guessed it, cameras, which has a lot of overlap with making movies. So, over this long arc from the time Titanic was released to now, I keep coming back in my mind to what's the deal with James Cameron and his undersea exploration. Is he a tourist? Is he a legit actor in the space? Is he legit? But he's only legit because he had a ton of money to sink into undersea exploration because he was already
Yes.
this rich and famous director.
Yes.
But then, then is he a patron of undersea exploration? In which case, like a participatory patron, okay, that seems fine. I mean, a lot of people have a lot of money and don't do anything with it except buy stuff for themselves.
Yeah. It's an interesting conversation. Um, the question, and this is not for me to answer, for somebody
No,
else,
I'm going to
but
make you answer this question: is James Cameron a legitimate undersea explorer? Give me your thought process to this. And I don't care about the actual answer. I want to know what your thought process that goes into it.
so quick sidebar, because that's how we do. Uh, do you remember the story from like a few months back where some guy who had an undersea sub company that he got several billionaires, like some really wealthy people on board, and the thing crumpled up? They had some kind of malfunction. The thing crumpled up like an aluminum can. This was like 3 months ago, four
Oh,
months
yeah.
ago, maybe.
Oh, I super remember. Followed it
Yeah.
very closely. James Cameron was dialed right into that.
I'm surprised. That's what triggered the thought of that for me, is I'm surprised he wasn't on that expedition.
No, of course he wasn't on the expedition because he saw this. He saw the submersible. He knew it was made out of carbon fiber. He knew that the guy that was on the safety team had basically wrote a letter of protest saying the thing had been deep cycle tested and failed too many times and wasn't fit for purpose. And James Cameron more or less said as much. Apparently, he texted some people in the undersea exploration community, like before the news even broke, talking about condolences and we've lost a friend.
The undersea exploration community.
Dude, Cameron was dialed in to the Navy. He had he had gotten the news from the Navy that the sound signature of the implosion that was indicative of a catastrophic failure of the vessel. Like he knew all that stuff and was texting people about it because the Navy were like, "Oh man, incident. Let me call James Cameron."
Okay, well then he's a legitimate undersea exploration dude.
Guy,
Yeah.
see then, and this is where the titles come in. I don't know what you just make a title for a thing, right? Like the title is explorer, right?
Make
Or the title is patron, or the title is financier.
yeah.
Does it even matter? You just do
Well,
the thing.
the important point that you brought up that I think is worth exploring, or not that, is James Cameron an undersea exploration guru, but the important point is what people of means choose to do with their money. And is it self gratification? And not that these are mutually exclusive, but is it self gratification, or is it the betterment of others? And not like the betterment of others, but I really want this basketball court named after me, so I'm going to, give this money, but like legitimately the betterment of others. And it's not a value assessment. It's or value judgment. It's an objective assessment. And it's not for me to decide what is, and, what are the lines on the field for that game, but it's an interesting question.
So if James Cameron bought his way in, he can still be legitimate if he puts in the reps and does the work. And if
Sure.
somebody else, and if your Harley rider buys their way in, but shivs somebody with with a would you have a syringe? Shivs somebody with a syringe full of questionable fluid, they still count as being jumped into the gang.
Yeah. I'm assuming if you surveyed the career marine biologists that had to do, X number of years of working their way up and volunteering, and they had to rise through the ranks, whatever that is for undersea exploration. There's probably some resentment until the checks started coming in from James Cameron. There was probably some resentment that, who does this guy think he is? And
I bet you there's somebody who out there who's full of resentment, was in the same boat as me, was like, who's this clown trying to go underwater? And then they meet the guy and they're like, oh, this guy just likes undersea exploration. He seems
exactly,
cool.
exactly, exactly.
Meanwhile, if you're undersea exploration Jesus, I don't know who that would be other than Jacques Cousteau. But like if you're Jacques Cousteau and everybody looks up to you as Jacques Cousteau, and then it turns out that they meet you and you're just an unpleasant person, but the preeminent mind of undersea exploration, man, people are gonna back away from you. They don't want to spend their time with you. They'll be like, oh, he's great, but
Yeah.
and then Jacques Cousteau would be surrounded by butt kissers instead of like esteemed collaborators.
Have you had that experience where you really, really respect someone that you've never met? You know them peripherally from a distance, but you respect their work. You meet them and you're like, oh God, the emperor's fully unclothed.
I've never met any really rich or famous people who I knew of from a distance. I have interacted with people who were prominent or powerful or well off in, like multiple layers above or ahead of me. And I I mean, the two things that have come to mind are, wow, this person's life really is a lot different than mine. Number one, and number two, they still tie their shoes one after the other, same as everybody else.
Yeah.
And I think maybe a better summary of this is people are just people. So if you can have a good interaction with a regular person, you're likely to be able to have a good interaction with a rich famous person. If the rich famous person is a jerk and has bad interactions with other people around them over and over again, you being a normal person or a butt kisser or anything else, you're very unlikely to be able to overcome the fact that that person is just a jerk or unlikable or socially difficult or whatever else.
Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't necessarily going for rich and famous, but just someone that you respected, someone that you admired their work. Or I've had that experience happen, not necessarily as a personal interaction, but sort of an inside baseball view of someone as a person that I respected their work. And it's like, uh,
Was it literal baseball?
no, had a lot of that though.
I have a specific example of this,
Okay.
and it's too it's probably not very fair, but uh, Mark Anderson, the venture capitalist, Andreessen, you know this guy?
Andreessen,
Yeah,
Mark
Andreessen,
Andreessen. Yeah.
yeah, from Horowitz.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in the early 2000s, he wrote this long set of blog posts about how to start and run a business. And like I didn't follow his career, I didn't follow his VC stuff, but this set of blog posts were really good. Also, I've never heard his name. I've only seen it written. So I'm like, I read these blog posts long after they were written and they'd been archived by somebody else. I was like, oh man, this stuff is really good, super useful, to the point, succinct, actionable, all the things you look for in advice from random rich people in in the tech world who are nice enough to write it down so you could try and follow it. Very, guru-ish, but not overbearing and not very self-involved. That was all great. And his firm is like really deeply, deeply into Bitcoin and blockchain technology now. And it's also, I'm not even going to make a judgment as to whether that's good or that's bad. I'm just going to say that his company is extremely self-interested in their continuing promotion of Bitcoin, blockchain, et cetera, in the sense that they have massive investments in this space and continue to pump pretty shallow talking points out into, the internet space, and basically disregard or ignore critiques, criticism, counterpoints. It's very cultish now, and it's a lot of it comes from him. And I think that when I look at a contrast between, I loved these blog posts you wrote, and man, this is a very self-interested, self-promotional thing coming from a really rich dude. When I contrast those, I basically left with, well, if I was in his shoes, I'd probably be doing the same thing. Number one. Number two, hey, maybe he honestly believes it and he's fully self-deluded that this is okay. And three, if you've got like a bubble around you, you don't have to be self-deluded. You can be deluded by everything that you ever do. And then I come back to like, well, maybe the gazillionaires aren't quite like the rest of us. maybe that's not all. That's not all a good thing.
So I think this specific example is a tough one because I think there are so many institutional, not just tweaks at the margin, full scale changes institutionally in a system that is the Geppetto of the world. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of beaks have to be wetted, a lot of things have to be in place. But I think there are scenarios that we don't know and won't know for a while. I get the sense, though, that for the average investor, Bitcoin is you're dumb, you're not bright if you're playing that game. But I think there is a long term play that's inevitable once all the beaks are properly wetted and all the structures are in place. I think it's not going anywhere
Well, I agree.
because
That distributed finance is definitely not going.
yeah,
Decentralized finance is not going anywhere, and
yeah,
we're not going to talk about it intelligently on this particular podcast unless I do a
nope.
lot more work on learning about it.
I know I know some of the sort of 101s of the infrastructure and, that sort of thing. Um, but it's no, we don't know.
I got another one, also famous, also Silicon Valley associated. Um, I was I was really surprised and impressed when Elon Musk was doing chief engineering work at his multiple manufacturing companies, and I liked hearing about uh, things like how do you install a robot, how do you set up a robot, how do you maintain a robot, how do you get a better press, how do you reduce the bill of materials, how do you reduce the part count. Hearing all that stuff from a wealthy software tech entrepreneur was a real breath of fresh air, and particularly at like the early days of Tesla and SpaceX. It was like very uncommon to hear that kind of stuff, and it harkened back to the glory days of wealthy American industrialists, and then and then I read more about how he just interacts with people, and I'm like, man, this guy's awful. I mean, we've talked about this before. You could potentially separate the behavior and the results of the work and the man. All of that is true, but you know in my mind I'm like, there's good guys and there's bad guys, and if you're the wealthy industrialist who's Tony Starking the world, then Tony Stark is not a nuanced character. Tony Stark makes the Iron Man suit. It's for the good guys. He fights the bad guys. The bad guys lose because Tony Stark has a better Iron Man suit. And also he treats everybody around him as a bit aloof. But, in the end, he's a good guy. You know what I'm saying? That's my Tony Stark is a cartoon character that then became a Marvel movie character with this guy named Iron Man, who's the superhero who wears a suit that's basically a robot that goes over him. I
I
needed to give you the quick Wikipedia of who's Iron Man and Tony Stark there.
So those names were in the ether, in
Yeah.
my ether. So I pulled all that together. Um, but I appreciate the clarification.
Of course.
You know what? Here's my thing. Who in my life, I don't think anybody, but who in my life, if I were to invent all these things, humanity changing things, super big swings and be really successful and be the wealthiest person in the world, who in my life would you be able to go back and have them say he's terrible, he's the worst person ever? I'm always there's probably a there, but with people like that, there's always an incentive to have a polarized position one way or another, and that's one thing that I try to keep in mind.
I can give you another example that doesn't put this onto. Is he currently the wealthiest person in the world?
He is,
Okay,
well,
well,
the wealthiest recorded person in the world. There's some oil people in the Middle East worth trillions,
all right.
so
So let's take this away from arm's length commentary on the world's richest person. And I will say, I'm going to go back to movies again. This might be a struggle. Third time this show. Uh, the movie Butch and Sundance. Do you know this movie?
Butch Cassidy and the Sundance
Butch
Kid.
Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. That's old enough that you might have seen it as a child when you were still watching movies.
I think my father, I've seen it because you watch what your father watched,
Yeah.
with the one TV household, but I don't remember it.
Robert Redford and Cool Hand Luke, Paul Newman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so these guys are bad guys. And I watched this movie when I was probably 11 or 12. I had a very hard time with the fact that the protagonists of the movie were bad guys. It was very difficult for me. And uh I didn't like I left the movie. I mean, we wasn't in a theater, but like the movie was on. I'm like, I can't do this. Butch and Sundance are outlaws. They deserve to be, brought before the law, and justice must be served. And so I think I also had the same expectation of Thomas Edison and Steve Jobs and, take your pick, like all these big hostile personalities that also got a lot of stuff done. I think I had my hero worship hat on, wanting it to be like the stories.
Did you root for Wile E. Coyote?
Uh I honestly feel like I didn't take sides. Like I feel like I was there for the spectacle of it all.
I wanted Wiley to get it. I wanted him to get it. I wanted him to do it one time.
I had like I can remember an inkling of a feeling of like, oh man, is he's gonna catch on this time. And then I think a lot of the interest of the show was being able to take you right up to the edge of being like, it's been the whole run of Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner, and they're finally going to give in and give him a shot. And then you keep believing it over and over again, and he never quite gets over the hump. That's
Same with
that's one of the brilliances of that show. Yeah.
same with Tom and Jerry.
My kids watched a lot of Tom and Jerry over the last 2 years or so, and I was simultaneously watching old episodes of The Simpsons. And Itchy and Scratchy from The Simpsons, it's not parody; it's just directly taking Tom and
Yeah,
Jerry. It's not even parody. It's nothing.
yeah. I don't know. There aren't many anti-heroes or bad protagonists in the, limited library of movies that I've seen that I've rooted for. But I did want Wile E. Coyote to succeed. I rooted for him.
That's the optimist in you. I think that I think about like what would it take for me to write movies or write cartoons or work in the industry or whatever, or be a professional creative. And then I come back to James Cameron and I'm like, well, have you made an animated movie today? No. Well, then you're not working in animation. What would it take for you to make an animated movie? I don't know. But I mean, I know what it would take to start making an animated movie. And then the hardest part for me is not so much like at this stage in my life, the hardest part for me is not you could make an animated movie, but think of all the work it would be, or you could make an animated movie, but think about how long it would take, or you could make an animated movie, but you don't have the right credentials, or it would take money or whatever. No, I'm not thinking about that. I'm like, you could make an animated movie, but here's 400 other things that you could be doing
Yeah,
instead.
yeah.
And that's the part that I'm like, I don't think I want to be worried about earning the credential because, like we talked about guitar repairs, right? Every minute you spend repairing a guitar or stringing a guitar or, conditioning the fretboard to make it smooth and shiny and silky and rich. Every minute that you're doing that is a minute that you're not writing a song. And what
No.
you want to do is write a song. Meanwhile, I'm like, I find it satisfying to work on the instrument, and I'm perfectly willing to give up that songwriting or playing or practicing time in order to be at one with the instrument, the the literal instrument of our creativity, and like figure out how it works and be like, oh man, this thing is complex enough that it can make all these crazy sounds, but also it's so simple that anybody can get it, and then bringing other people along for the ride of like, oh, so and so wants to learn how to do this thing. Let me send him a couple of pictures of what I was doing to oil the fretboard today. So yeah, I don't want to be hung up on time spent credentialing if I could be spending time in the trenches is far too extreme a term here. In the thing, whatever the thing is, doing the thing.
Well, that's why I think that's what I like about this phase that we're entering culturally in the US, maybe globally. I don't have experiences outside of here, but I really enjoy, and we're very much on the precipice of this, where the prestige or the suggestion that one needs to obtain a degree in any field before they can be a contributing member to society is gone. Or that we're also chipping away at your subject matter expert is the PhD in field X. We're chipping away at that too, big time. And if you pay even a little bit of attention to health and fitness, yes, there are studies, and to get mainstream validation for any given thing to have your work referenced, you have to follow that process. But the time of and this is a bad thing too. It's the
Mm-hmm.
duality of trusted institutions are your source of credible, your source of credible information. It's good and bad, but that is decentralizing rapidly before our eyes. I like
Totally
it.
agree.
I like it. I think we're going to figure out how to validate the people who don't have what were the traditional forms of validation, and the work's going to stand on its own. But I think we're firm that this pace is accelerating. It's not going anywhere.
I mean, my biggest fear is that I'm full of it and everybody knows it and I'm publicly full of it.
Yeah,
And everybody's just right behind my back being like, forget that guy. He
yeah.
doesn't know anything. But I think that says more about me than it says about anybody else and what they're
I've
saying.
I've suffered with that for years, and I mean, not just imposter syndrome, but the feeling, because I've had some. You've known me for a while. I've had some pretty aggressive contrarian views in the data science space, specifically in industry and manufacturing, but in the data science space generally, that I was real hesitant to talk about because I thought, oh, these other people know way more than I do. They see something that I don't see. But as I've done this more, and as I've built teams, and I've been in the arena more, I'm even more resolute in those original beliefs. And now I have no problem saying them. And now it's kind of commonplace that, hey, you know, your model is based on training data, they're pattern matching algorithms. There's no magic here. There's no magic in any of this stuff. The magic is in the marketing spin or the hype to generate investment dollars or to gouge your stock price. Like, there's no magic in AI.
Bold words for a bold man.
Yes.
You're no anti-hero. You're just a regular hero, Terry. Hero of AI and now podcasting. We're out
I'm
of
the
time.
I'm the James Cameron of AI. Except
I don't know if that analogy holds,
I'm
but
not.
I'll try and work with you on it.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I know I'm not.
Go make the Titanic of AI. The
Yes, sir.
movie, the successful movie, not the somewhat unsuccessful ship.
Hey, we have a friend coming tomorrow, by the way.
Great.
Yeah.
See you then.
Have a great afternoon.
Bye, Terry.